They told us the experiment would last only 1 hour. I signed the papers. They put the headset on my head. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I was back in my apartment. Or so I thought. At first, everything looked normal. My phone buzzed. My cat meowed. The world was exactly as I remembered, but something was off. The clock on the wall kept resetting to 12 o'clock. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was a glitch, some kind of side effect from the procedure. But then I looked outside. The sky flickered like someone had turned reality off and then on again. That's when I panicked. I rushed to the window and pounded on it. Outside, cars drove past and people walked by. Everyone moving like normal, except they weren't. They were all stuck repeating the same action over and over again. One girl skipped down the sidewalk. She stopped at the corner, turned around and started skipping back the other way. A man in a blue shirt walked his dog. When the leash snapped taut, he stopped and started walking the other way again. He didn't seem to notice that the dog, the leash, or even his own feet were moving backwards. They were caught in a loop. And then I noticed the neighbor across the street. She was waving at me. In a friendly gesture, she lifted her hand, smiled and said, "Nice weather today," then lowered her hand and turned away to go back to watering her plants. And as she did, I realized she wasn't actually talking to me. Her smile faded and she continued watering the plants as if I wasn't there at all. "Nice weather today," she said again, raising her hand to wave. I wanted to call out to her, but my throat was hoarse and all I could manage was a dry croak. What was happening to everyone? Had the experiment affected them too? Was that why they were trapped like flies in amber? But what about me? How long had I been out? Seconds, minutes, hours? Had I also been looped? No, I was different. I was the only one who could move forward. I had to get out of this place. I raced downstairs and out into the street. I searched frantically for a landmark, anything familiar. I needed to find my way back to the lab where they could help me, where they could wake me up from the nightmare. But I couldn't find the lab. All I saw were those same streets, the same trees, the same houses. And as I walked, I noticed the sky flickered again. Looking up, I gasped. Above me, a new wall of code unfurled. It was a message from the lab, a status report on the experiment. And as I watched, it scrolled past. Subject 1 shows no signs of awakening. Begin second experimental cycle. Second cycle. How many more cycles would there be? How long would this go on? In the distance, I heard a familiar sound, the whine of police sirens. Hope surged through me. If anyone could break the loop, it was them. Maybe they'd save me. Maybe they'd end the experiment. I broke into a run, stumbling after the receding lights. But as I got closer, I saw the officers weren't chasing an emergency. They were pursuing each other, running after themselves in an endless circle. The lead car sped past the intersection, turned left and right, and then left again, passing the same point again and again. The flashing lights illuminated the face of the driver. His eyes were wide with panic, his mouth open in a silent scream. Then I saw him, one of the researchers. He was standing outside the building, beckoning me inside. Relief washed over me. Finally, I could explain what was happening. They would understand. They would know how to fix it. I ran toward him, pushing past the front doors and into the lobby. As I approached, I saw his face twisted in a desperate grimace. He mouthed words I couldn't hear, but his expression was clear. I had to follow him. He sprinted down the hallway, weaving between the desks. I followed close behind, dodging chairs and computers. We burst through the double doors at the end of the hall, and I almost laughed in triumph. Here was the lab, the control room where I could be woken up. But instead of rows of computers, only empty desks remained. The only sign of life was a cup of cold coffee on one of the tables. The researcher slumped to his knees beside it, burying his face in his hands. "What's happening?" I cried. "Why is this happening?" He didn't answer. He just kept repeating the same phrase over and over again. "Wake up, please wake up, please wake up." Panic constricted my chest. I had to get out of here, escape while I still could. But when I reached for the door, it vanished. The walls were bare concrete, the windows black, bottomless pits. I was trapped. Despair threatened to engulf me. Then the researcher raised his head. "This way," he rasped. He scrambled to his feet and pushed through another door. I followed him down a long, dark corridor. At the end, I saw a faint glow, light spilling from beneath a crack in the door. I surged forward and he stopped me with a hand on my shoulder. "Wait," he whispered urgently. "It doesn't work. It won't work." "What do you mean?" I cried, pushing past him. I threw open the door and stepped inside. The sight before me froze the blood in my veins. Behind the control panel stood a row of identical pods. Inside each, a person lay strapped to a table, hooked up to wires snaking out of their heads. The glowing brain activity monitors flickered beside them. The researcher sank to the floor, his shoulders shaking with sobs. "You have to stop them," he choked out. "Don't let them do this to you." My gaze fell on one of the pods. Inside, I saw the monitor light flicker and dim. Then the wires beneath the head snapped. I felt the researcher stiffen beside me. "No," he breathed. "Please, please don't." But it was too late. From the pod, a hand shot out, clutching at the wires. The fingers twitched, then relaxed. The eyes beneath the monitor fluttered open. Groaning, the figure stirred. She looked at me. Fear contorted her face. "Please," she whispered urgently. "Don't let them connect me, please." Before I could answer, the door burst open and 2 technicians entered. "Subject 3, ready for transfer," one of them announced, nodding at the groggy woman. "Stand by for connection." I lunged for the man. "Stop," I screamed. "Don't do this." He shoved me away. "Out of the way. You're blocking the procedure." In a panic, I stumbled back. But as I did, I felt the floor beneath me give way. I cried out as I fell. Through the opening, I saw the darkness below, and I knew I couldn't stay here. I pulled myself onto the floor and crawled for the exit. As I squeezed through the opening, I heard the woman's screams echoing behind me. Outside, the world was shrouded in mist. I struggled to make out the shapes around me, trees, roots. What was this place? Where was I? As my eyes adjusted, I realized I was standing in a forest. The sky above was filled with swirling mists, hiding whatever stars or planets should have been there. The ground beneath my feet seemed alien. There was a clearing ahead, and as I approached, I saw more figures. They sat in a circle, staring blankly into the fire. I called out to them, hoping they could help me, but my voice caught in my throat. Their eyes were vacant, their mouths twisted in grotesque smiles. As I drew closer, I saw the expressions hadn't changed in decades. Some were young, some old. All were trapped in a state of blissful ignorance. A tall man with wild eyes beckoned me closer. "Join us," he rasped, his voice like sandpaper. "Join us and we'll show you the truth." But I shook my head, unable to speak. I had to get out of here. I had to find my way home. The tall man rose and stepped toward me. "You can't leave," he said softly. "Once you enter the loop, there's no escaping it." He reached out a hand, palm open, fingers curled. "Look," he said sadly. "Look what they've done to us." His hand passed through my chest. I screamed, staggered back and fell, kneeling on the wet ground. I looked up at him. "What?" I choked out. "What are you?" He smiled, his teeth sharp and white. "We're free," he whispered, and he vanished. Behind me, the forest pulsed with movement. The trees swayed, the mists swirled, the faces and the shadows beckoned. "Come with us," they hissed. "We'll show you the truth. We'll show you the truth." Then the tallest tree rustled. "Time for bed. Little one," it creaked. "Time for bed." And as the branches reached down for me, I knew the experiment wasn't over. It had only just begun. That was years ago, or maybe only minutes. Time doesn't work the same here. Every morning I wake up in my apartment. The clock strikes 12 o'clock. My neighbor smiles and says, "Nice weather today." And sometimes when the sky flickers, I see you, sitting there listening to my story. Maybe you're outside the experiment, or maybe you're just another layer.